Let's analyze offense. Let's try to understand when you are offended. When something offends you, something that is said about you, you find it offensive. It means that it contains some element of truth. The example that I like to use always is if I call a thin person fat, that person is not going to be offended. That person is going to laugh it off because that person knows that I'm not fat, I'm thin. So if somebody is calling me fat, there's nothing to be offended about. But if you call a fat person fat in the manner of ridicule, then that person is offended. Why? Because that person is fat. This is the clearest example to understand this point. So it tells me that offense can be an opportunity. Offense can be taken productively. Because if I'm offended by something that someone says about me, that means there is some truth in it. So that means there is some aspect of my life or my psyche that I can improve on, so as not to be offended by such a thing. Now, there's a difference between being angry at somebody and being offended. Let's say somebody calls me a thief, but I'm not one. I've never stolen anything. But because I'm being called a thief, the society looks at me differently now because that person went ahead and told everybody that I was a thief. Am I offended? I want to make this distinction. I won't call it being offended. That is being angry because somebody is spreading rumors about you and that's affecting your reputation with the society. So you are bound to feel angry at that person for doing such an act. But that's different from being offended because that thing which was said about me, that I'm a thief, is not going to gnaw at me. As opposed to, let's say, if I was a thief and somebody found it out and they call me out on it, that you're a thief, you steal things, then even if the society does not know about it, I would still feel offended for being called a thief. So it doesn't matter if other people know about it. If you know in your heart of hearts that what is being said about you is true, that's when you feel offended. So anger is different. Offense is an assault on your self-esteem. And your self-esteem is your reputation with yourself. When that is being attacked, that is when you are offended. And that can only happen when something that is being said contains an element of truth. So I want to say that offense can be taken productively. Whenever you feel offended, not angry, anger is different, as I explained. But whenever somebody says something that offends you, instead of attacking the offender, you have to take that as an opportunity to grow because there is something in your life, something in your psyche that you must fix so that that thing no longer offends you. I have not found a single example so far where something that is not true can also be offensive. If you have any such example, you can let me know. But I've been thinking about this for many years now, and I think I've got it locked in that it must contain some element of truth for it to be offensive to you. So before we end this video, I want to, now that we have AI is also very smart. So let's ask AI whether AI can give us any example of a scenario where a person may feel offended even if something that is said about him or her is not true. So let me call Grok and see what we get. Hey Rex, can you hear me?
Yo, I hear you loud and clear. What's up?
Rex, I've been making this video. I'm in the middle of the video right now where I am postulating that for something to offend you, something that is said about you, for it to offend you, it must contain an element of truth. And I've never found an example which which is different from this. So, do you have any example where something offensive is said, the person is offended, but there's no truth in what is said?
That's an interesting theory you're exploring in your video. You're saying for something to offend, there needs to be a grain of truth in it. And you're looking for a counterexample where someone is offended by a statement that's completely false? Let me think about this. One possible example could be a case of mistaken identity or a false accusation. Imagine someone is wrongly accused of something like being called a thief in public when they've never stolen anything. The statement is entirely untrue, yet the person might feel offended because of the embarrassment or damage to their reputation. Their offense comes from the social impact of the lie, rather than any truth in the accusation.
Have we had this chat before? Because you came up with the same example that I was giving my viewers of being called a thief when one is not a thief. I think, and the way I explained it just now is that's that would be anger. That would not be offense. If somebody is not a thief, but he is called a thief and the society knows about it, it would damage their reputation and it would make them feel angry. Offense, on the other hand, is somebody being called out on something, even if the society does not know about it. If I know that I have a tendency to steal and somebody just out of the blue called me a thief on my face, even if the society does not know about it, even if my reputation with the world is not affected at all, I would still feel offended because there's a truth in it. So you see the difference between anger and offense.
Got it. You're making a clear distinction between anger and offense. Anger being about a false accusation, like being called a thief when you're not, causing reputational harm or frustration, while offense is more personal, tied to a truth about yourself that hits home, even privately. My bad for repeating the thief example. It sounds like we're circling the same ideas here. Let's try a different angle. Consider someone who's secretly insecure about their intelligence, say. They've always felt they're not smart enough, but nobody knows this. If someone jokingly calls them dumb in a private setting, with no societal impact, and they get offended, your theory would suggest there's truth in it, like their own self-doubt validates the jam. But what if someone has no such insecurity, believes fully in their abilities, and still gets offended by being called dumb in private? Could that happen purely from the insult's intent or context, without any truth?
Great,
Struggling.
great point, right? So, this is where it's important to know the anatomy of offense because many a times we don't think that we have any insecurity about something, but yet we feel offended when we hear something. That should make us introspect because it means that we have a deep seated insecurity of some kind, which we are also not aware of at the surface. But when something offends you, that's an opportunity for you to now introspect as to why it offended me. It must have some truth and it hit somewhere, some place in my mind that even I was not aware of, that I'm insecure about this thing. So, perfect example that you gave. This person, if this person feels offended at being called dumb, then even if this person thought that he was not dumb or did not have any insecurity like that, why was he offended? He was offended because, in some way, the accusation or this characterization of this person being dumb was true. And in that moment, it must have flashed in this person's mind how that was true. Maybe suddenly that person would think of some situations which would validate that he was dumb or something like that, whereby some hidden, deep-seated insecurity was called to surface. And that's why the person felt offended.
That's a sharp way to break it down. You're saying offense is like a mirror. It only stings when it reflects some hidden truth or insecurity, even if the person doesn't consciously acknowledge it at first. So, in the example of someone being called dumb, if they get offended, it's because the comment triggered a buried doubt or memory that resonates, like a flashback to a moment they felt less than, even if they thought they were confident.
Can you think of any other example that deviates from what I'm postulating? Meaning, something can be offensive even if there is no truth in it. One more chance.
All right, let's give this another shot. I'm digging deep to find a case where someone is genuinely offended by something with zero truth to it. Here's one. Imagine a person who's deeply proud of their cultural heritage, like they've always celebrated their traditions and feel totally secure in their identity. Someone mocks their culture in a private conversation, saying something completely baseless, like their traditions are made-up nonsense, with no historical basis, which is factually false. The person feels offended, not because they doubt their heritage, they know it's legitimate, but because the attack feels like a personal violation of something sacred to them. Could that offense stem purely from the disrespect, without any truth in the statement triggering an insecurity? What do you think?
I would say that's an example of anger again. Because so how do you know? How does a person know? Okay, let Grok go because we don't want to continue with AI now, but let me expand on this, or let's analyze this example. How does a person know? What I'm feeling is not offense, it's anger, right? Now, if there was really something um, wrong about your culture, you are in a social setting, somebody says something negative about your culture, and if it rings true in your heart of hearts, you know, okay, what is being said is true. You are doubtful about your roots or about your cultural heritage. You have some doubts, but you act as if your culture is great. And then when you hear this thing, you feel offended because it makes you doubt, but you don't want to admit that. That is real offense because there is something which was wrong. Now, you cannot go and fix your cultural heritage, but you can fix your psyche in that case. Now, let's say, as Grok said, um, there was nothing wrong in your culture, with your cultural heritage, and you know, you are 100% sure that what is being said is untrue. In that case, you may feel anger. So, how would you differentiate whether it's offense that you're feeling or anger? So, I want to say you feel angry when your reputation with society is threatened. That's when you feel angry. So, in this case, if you felt angry, you would address it in front of the people who are present. You'll try to make people or try to convince people that what was said about your culture is untrue. Then when you go away from that situation, it will not gnaw at you because your self-reputation, your self-esteem is not under assault. Your self-esteem is intact because you are confident about your culture, your cultural heritage. You had to correct the situation in front of the people. So you did that. You may have done it angrily, but when you go back, you are now at peace. That tells there was anger and not offense. But if you're offended, and that can only happen if what was said was true, in that case, it does not matter even if there was nobody around. Because offense is not about your reputation with the world, offense is about your own self esteem and your reputation with yourself. When you go away from that person, you will not be able to rest. You will not be able to be at peace because now your self esteem is under assault. So that's how you can tell what is offense versus what is mere anger. So I maintain that for something to be offensive, it must contain an element of truth. And the positive thing out of this discussion should be the offense can be taken productively. Do not attack the offender. Look for truth in what is said you may not know that insecurity or the aspect that needs fixing, you may not have known consciously, because it may be so deep in your psyche that you were not even aware about that area. But the moment you feel offense, you should feel grateful. Actually, you should feel grateful that this person offended you, so that now you have something to work on, something to improve. So that's about taking offense positively, productively, by understanding the anatomy of offense. Let me know your thoughts.